I never figured I'd be the guy sitting down to write one of those posts. You know, the kind where folks just pour their hearts out online about how their whole life went to hell, and everyone watches it like a wreck they can't tear their eyes from. But here I am. And yeah, my wife cheated on me, but it's who she hooked up with that really cuts deep. My own brother. I guess I should start with how everything seemed perfect at the beginning, right? You hear that a lot in stories like this. Everything starts off great. We had this house in the suburbs, not too flashy but comfortable enough. My wife, Rachel, was a fitness trainer, super passionate about her job, and I was doing pretty well in finance. We were setting ourselves up for the future, saving for vacations, making plans, and from the outside, things looked solid. But you know how it goes, those little cracks started forming under the surface, and that's when it all began to unravel. Rachel was the type of woman who turned heads. Wherever we went, people noticed her. In the beginning, I loved that. I mean, walking around with someone like her made me feel like the luckiest guy alive. But it was more than just her looks. She had this crazy energy, this drive like she could take on anything. I used to think that's what made us click. I'm not exactly Mr. Excitement, so I figured we balanced each other out. But lately, that energy started to feel like distance. She started talking about needing space. That's always how it starts, right? I need space. Then came these work trips she started taking on weekends. A personal trainer going on business trips. That should have set off some alarms, but at first, I just brushed it off. I thought she was expanding her business, maybe finding clients in new places. But then she started turning off her phone for hours. That's when the doubts began creeping in. She'd say she was too busy or stuck in meetings. But who the hell has late-night meetings in the fitness industry? The more I thought about it, the more obvious it became that something wasn't right. I didn't want to admit it, but our sex life had changed too. It wasn't like it used to be. I'd go to bed wanting her, trying to connect, but she'd just say she was too tired or not in the mood. That started happening more and more. She'd pull away or throw out some excuse, and before long, it felt like I was living with a stranger. When we did have sex, it was like she was somewhere else, just going through the motions. I tried to convince myself she was just stressed out from work, maybe that I wasn't doing enough, but deep down, I knew better. I remember talking to my buddy Mike about it. He's an old friend, I've known him for years. We used to hit the bars together before I got married. He works in the film industry now, so he's around all sorts of people. We were having drinks one night, and I hinted that things with Rachel weren't the same. I didn't lay it all out there just yet, just that something was off. He gave me this look, like he knew exactly what I was going through but didn't want to say it out loud. "If you need anything, man, let me know," he told me. That stuck with me, even though I didn't take him up on it. Not then, anyway. Then came those evening, work, trips. That's when things really started going downhill. She'd tell me she had to meet new clients or work on some project, but she never gave me any specifics. I'd ask her where she was headed or who she was meeting, and she'd snap at me. "Why do you always need to know? Or can't I just have my own life for a change?" I'd back off, but that knot in my stomach just got bigger and bigger. Maybe I should give you a little background on my family to make all this make more sense. Growing up, I was always the one who had to bust my ass for everything. My folks were good people, but when my younger brother, Jake, came along, it was like they forgot I existed. He was the golden boy, the one who could do no wrong. They gave him everything. I worked hard in school, got a solid job, built a life. Meanwhile, Jake seemed to coast through life, always landing on his feet no matter what mess he got himself into. The worst part? My parents wanted to hand him everything. A few months ago, they told me they planned to give him the family business. Just like that. All those years I thought I'd finally earned some recognition, but instead, they were ready to pass it all to Jake on a silver platter. Why? Because he was younger, more charming, easier to love, I guess. So yeah, there was already some resentment there. But I never, not in a million years, thought Jake would betray me like this, not with Rachel. I should have seen it coming. The signs were there, clear as day. but I was too caught up trying to save what was left of our marriage to put the pieces together. Looking back now, it's so damn obvious. The way they acted at family get-togethers, those sneaky little smiles they'd exchange when they thought no one was paying attention, I chalked it up to being harmless. Turns out I was a fool. You know that gut feeling when everything inside you screams something's off, but you just refuse to believe it? Yeah, that's where I was. After all those years together, I still couldn't wrap my head around the idea that Rachel might actually be cheating on me. But the signs kept piling up. She became ridiculously secretive with her phone, locking it up every time I walked into the room, taking it with her everywhere, even into the bathroom. Her laptop was always shut tight and password protected. It didn't used to be like that. At first, it was just little things I shrugged off, but soon enough, it became something I couldn't ignore. I tried being the good husband, the kind who doesn't snoop through his wife's stuff, but I hit a breaking point. One night, while she was in the shower, I grabbed her phone and tried to unlock it. Of course, she changed her passcode. That was all the confirmation I needed. She was definitely hiding something. So, I started digging. Anytime I could get a moment with her phone, I'd check the call logs, texts, emails, anything. But everything was spotless, almost too clean. It was like she was scrubbing all the evidence, making sure I couldn't find a single trace of whatever she was up to. Her laptop was no different, always locked, and if I walked into the room, she'd shut it with some lame excuse like, "Oh, just finishing some work." But I wasn't born yesterday. I knew she was covering her tracks. The more careful she became, the more obsessed I got. I started watching her, the way she'd glance at her phone and smirk when she thought I wasn't looking, or how she'd go off for those weekend trips and come back with these half-baked stories about how exhausting it all was. I knew she was lying to me, but without any solid proof, what could I do? That's when I decided to call Mike. We hadn't been as close over the years, but we still had that bond, the kind where you can pick up right where you left off even if it's been a while. Mike's in the film industry, and he's got connections. He knows how to dig up stuff that's not meant to be found. When we first talked about Rachel, I hadn't spilled the full story, but now, I needed help. I needed someone to confirm what I was too afraid to admit to myself. "Hey man," I said over the phone, "I think Rachel's hiding something. I'm not sure what, but I need to find out. Can you help me?" Mike didn't hesitate for a second. "Of course, dude. Let me see what I can dig up." That was all it took. A few days went by, and even though I didn't have answers yet, I felt a little better knowing someone else was in it with me. But man, I wasn't ready for what Mike found. It was late when he called me back, his voice sounding more serious than I'd ever heard. "James, I found something. You're gonna need to see this." My heart felt like it was about to jump out of my chest. "What is it?" I asked. He sent me a link, no explanation, just the URL. My hands were shaking when I clicked it. The link took me to a video on some adult site I'd never even heard of. And there she was, Rachel, my wife, dressed in ways I'd never seen her before, doing things I don't even have the words for. In that moment, my whole world fell apart. My stomach twisted into knots, my throat felt tight, and I couldn't catch my breath. I just sat there, watching in shock, frozen in place. The one person I thought I knew better than anyone else was in front of me, in a way I could have never imagined. But it wasn't just her body on display, it was her face, her expressions. She wasn't acting in some video. She looked comfortable, confident, like this was who she really was when no one was watching. And then there he was, Alex. I didn't even need Mike to confirm it. I recognized him immediately. That producer she'd been working with on all those so-called fitness projects. It sure as hell wasn't fitness they were filming, I'll tell you that. I don't know how long I sat there staring at the screen, even after I'd closed the tab. My mind just kept replaying the video, over and over. I couldn't shake the image of how normal she acted around me, like nothing was wrong. The woman I kissed goodbye every morning, the woman I slept next to at night, was out there selling herself to strangers, and I had no clue. I called Mike back, barely able to get the words out. How long? I stammered. For a while, he said quietly. From what I could dig up, she started with one video, like maybe she was just testing the waters, but then it grew. She's been doing this for months, James, under some fake name. She's pretty big in that world. Months. My wife had been living this double life for months, and I hadn't even seen it. I felt like the biggest fool on the planet. No, worse than that, I didn't even know who I was anymore. That's when everything started making sense. The late nights, the secretive behavior, those so-called work trips. She wasn't out there building some fitness empire. No, she was out there filming with Alex, and who knows how many others, then coming home to me like everything was perfectly normal. But it wasn't. None of this was normal, and at that moment, I knew my marriage was dead in the water. I'd been carrying the weight of that video around for days now, like a massive boulder crushing me every time I see Rachel. How many times had I kissed her, touched her, while she was off doing God knows what with someone else, with Alex of all people? I couldn't keep pretending everything was okay, but I didn't know how to bring it up. How do you even start a conversation like that? How do you tell your wife you found out about her double life in the most humiliating way possible? But that night, as we sat at the dinner table and she laughed like everything was just fine, I lost it. We were on the couch afterward, her scrolling through her phone, probably texting him, and me just sitting there, my mind racing and my heart pounding out of my chest. I couldn't take it anymore. Finally, I stood up, grabbed my laptop, and plopped down right in front of her. We need to talk, I said, my voice barely holding steady. She didn't even glance up from her phone. What's up? She asked, as casual as could be. My hands were shaking as I opened the laptop, pulled up the video Mike had sent me, and turned the screen toward her. Explain this. For a second, she didn't react. She just stared at the screen, her face blank, and then I saw it, the panic, the fear. She slammed the laptop shut and jumped up like moving away from it could somehow erase what I'd already seen. But it was too late. I knew. James, I can explain, she stammered, backing away like I was some kind of threat, her hands up as if to shield herself. Explain? I shouted, standing up too, the anger boiling over. What the hell is there to explain, Rachel? How long have you been doing this? How long have you been screwing him? She shook her head, tears already welling up, but I didn't care. I wasn't buying it. It's not what you think, she said, her voice trembling. I didn't mean for it to go this far. Oh, really? I spat, the bitterness seeping into my words. So what? You accidentally starred in adult videos? Accidentally slept with Alex? I could barely contain the disgust in my voice. It felt like I didn't even recognize the person in front of me anymore. This wasn't the woman I married. This wasn't the woman I loved. James, please, just listen, she begged, her voice cracking. It started out as a way to make some extra money. That's all. You were always at work, and I felt like I wasn't contributing, like I was just here waiting for you every day. I wanted something of my own, financial independence, something that wasn't tied to you. And then Alex, he offered me this opportunity. I just stared at her, stunned. So, you thought doing porn was the solution? What the hell is wrong with you? I said, the disbelief clear in my voice. She wiped at her tears, the words tumbling out faster now. It wasn't supposed to be like this, James. It was just one video at first, just to see how it went. And then, it kept going. I got caught up in it. People wanted more. And Alex, he told me it was a way to feel empowered, to take control of my own life. Empowered, I repeated, practically spitting the word out. So, sleeping with other people on camera made you feel empowered? I couldn't believe what I was hearing. It wasn't about the sex, she cried, her voice rising. It was about feeling wanted, feeling appreciated. You have no idea how lonely I've been, James. You don't see me anymore. All you care about is your job, your damn money, and making sure everything looks perfect from the outside. But you never asked me how I felt. You didn't care. I just stood there, my mind spinning, trying to wrap my head around what she was saying. Was this really her justification? That I didn't pay enough attention to her, so she went off and did this? You think this is my fault? I asked, my voice low, barely holding back my anger. Because I didn't give you enough attention? She sniffed and crossed her arms, still crying. It's not just that. It's everything. Our marriage hasn't been right for a long time. Before I could say anything, my phone buzzed in my pocket. Without thinking, I pulled it out and saw a message from Mike. You need to come see this, with an address attached. Who is that? Rachel asked, noticing my sudden shift in focus. None of your damn business, I snapped, grabbing my keys. I was done with this conversation, done with her pathetic excuses. I left the house without another word, my mind racing as I drove to the address Mike had sent. It wasn't far, just a small office building in a quiet part of town. I didn't know what I was walking into, but what I found when I got there. It almost broke me all over again. There they were, Rachel and Alex, standing close, talking and laughing like nothing had happened. Like she hadn't just admitted to screwing him behind my back for months. The rage that hit me then was something I'd never felt before. Everything went red. I kicked the door open and stormed in, my fists clenched, my whole body shaking with fury. They both turned to face me. Rachel's face went pale the moment she saw me. Alex? He just smirked. That goddamn smirk. What the hell is this? I shouted, my voice bouncing off the walls of the small room. James, please, Rachel started, but I cut her off. Shut up. I turned to Alex, barely holding myself together. You piece of shit. How long has this been going on? How long have you been screwing my wife? Alex leaned back against the desk, crossing his arms, looking as relaxed as ever. It's just business, man. Don't take it personally. Just business? I lost it. I lunged at him, grabbing him by the collar and slamming him against the wall. You've destroyed my life, and you call it business? Rachel screamed, trying to pull me off him, but I wasn't letting go. Not until I got the truth. Tell me the truth, Rachel, I demanded, turning to her. How long has this been going on? Tears streamed down her face as she finally broke. Months, she sobbed. It's been months. I let go of Alex, stepping back, the weight of her confession hitting me like a truck. Months. They had been together for months, and I was completely blind to it. It didn't mean anything, James, Rachel cried. It was just work. It was never about you. But I didn't believe her anymore. I couldn't. You've destroyed everything, I said quietly, turning to leave. We're done. And with that, I walked out, leaving them both behind, knowing there was no going back. I don't remember how long I sat in my car after that. Time just stopped. My mind felt like a tornado, thoughts crashing into each other, but none of them making any sense. How could everything fall apart so fast? How could someone I trusted with my whole life betray me in ways I never saw coming? For days after that, I barely functioned. I'd wake up in the morning, just staring at the ceiling, feeling like there was no point in even getting up. I didn't talk to anyone. Hell, I couldn't even face Mike after everything he'd shown me. I asked for the truth, but that didn't make it any easier to handle. The depression swallowed me whole. I stopped going to work, ignored every call, every text. Friends tried to reach out, but what was I supposed to say? Hey, yeah, my wife's been screwing my brother and a guy she films porn with. How's your day going? The betrayal wasn't just about Rachel cheating. It was the years we built together, the plans, the life, the promises. I kept asking myself, why? Why wasn't I enough? Why didn't I see it coming? Every time I tried to make sense of it, I'd just sink deeper into that dark hole, drowning in anger and humiliation. I barely slept, and when I did, I dreamt of them, Rachel with Alex, Rachel with my brother. Always laughing, always out of reach, while I stood on the outside looking in, helpless. I tried to block it out, to make the images go away, but they kept coming, like some twisted nightmare I couldn't wake up from. Eventually, the anger took over the sadness. I stopped feeling sorry for myself and started thinking about payback. If Rachel thought she could just walk away from all this, wreck my life, and keep hers intact, she had another thing coming. I wasn't going to sit back and let her get away with it. That's when I started thinking about divorce. It was inevitable. There was no fixing what she'd broken, but I wasn't about to let her walk away clean. I wanted her to feel the same pain I was feeling. I wanted her to lose everything, just like I had. So I called my lawyer, set up a meeting, and started planning my next move. She was going to pay for this, both financially and emotionally. The marriage might have been over, but that didn't mean she was going to win. I told my lawyer everything, about the affair, the porn, Alex. They took notes, nodded, and started building the divorce strategy. Amber was about to get hit with everything I had. And Alex? I wasn't done with him either. Mike and I started digging into his business, the company he'd used to produce Rachel's videos. If there's one thing I know about shady people like Alex, it's that they always leave a trail. And Mike? Well, he had connections and knew how to find dirt. It didn't take long for us to uncover something big. Tax evasion, financial fraud. Turns out, Alex had been skimming money off the top of his projects for years, hiding income and funneling it into some offshore account. Alex thought he was untouchable, but Mike had the connections to dig deep. The more we uncovered, the clearer it became how far Alex's corruption really went. I wasn't just out to ruin his relationship with Rachel. I was determined to bring down his entire empire. But knowing about it wasn't enough. We needed solid proof. Mike worked quietly in the background, gathering documents, pulling up records, and even tracking down people who could testify against Alex. We were building a case piece by piece. I wasn't just after revenge. I wanted justice. Rachel had chosen to be part of Alex's dirty world, so she was going down with him. I started looking at every part of Rachel's life that I could destroy. That fitness business she'd built? She'd used some of our joint assets to fund it, and I'd planned to take my share, leaving her with nothing. The house? That wasn't staying with her either. I didn't care what I had to pay in legal fees. I was determined to leave her with nothing but the wreckage she'd caused. As I worked with my lawyers, that anger inside me drove everything I did. Every document I signed, every strategy meeting, it felt like I was reclaiming a part of myself that she had stolen. Rachel wasn't going to walk away from this unscathed. She wasn't going to live the life she thought she'd have after tearing mine apart. And Alex? By the time we were done with him, he'd be lucky if he wasn't rotting in a jail cell. Behind the scenes, everything was moving fast. I was preparing for legal action, lining up my assets, and getting ready to hit Rachel with divorce papers. It felt like I was gearing up for war, and in many ways I was. She probably thought she had everything under control, thinking her little secret life with Alex was safe. But it wasn't. She was about to find out just how wrong she was. The divorce process was brutal, but I went in ready for it. I was prepared to tear her world apart the same way she had ripped mine to shreds. Rachel likely believed she could charm her way through it, flash that smile, and walk away with half of everything we built together. But she didn't know I'd already planned every move before the papers even hit the table. My lawyer was a shark, and I made sure he knew exactly what I wanted, everything. Every asset, every penny. I wasn't going to let her coast off into some cushy life after what she did. We built that life together, but she burned it to the ground the moment she chose her secret life with Alex over me. Rachel, of course, tried to play the victim. She had this whole sob story ready for the court, talking about how she deserved her share because she'd contributed to the marriage, because she worked too, because she sacrificed for us. But my lawyer shut that down real quick. We had video evidence of her double life, of her hidden career as an adult film actress, something she tried so hard to keep buried. And that's when things really got interesting. In court, everything came out. The videos, the affair, her role in the adult film industry. My lawyer laid it all out, piece by piece, exposing her for who she really was. It wasn't just a betrayal of our marriage, it was a betrayal of the person she'd pretended to be. The perfect wife, the fitness trainer, the woman who had it all together. She had spent years building up this image of herself, fooling everyone. But now, there was no hiding. Watching her sit there, her lies picked apart for everyone to see, was a twisted kind of satisfaction. I could see her face turn pale when the evidence was shown. I could feel the shame radiating off her as friends, family, and even her colleagues learned the truth about her secret life. The whispers started immediately, the looks of judgment from people who once admired her. She was finished. Rachel fought back, of course. She argued that the videos were just work, that they didn't define her or what she'd contributed to our marriage. But no one bought it, not after the mountain of evidence we'd stacked up against her. My lawyer shredded her defense, proving how she'd siphoned off money from our joint accounts to fund her little side projects. She thought she could outsmart me, but she didn't realize I'd been paying attention to every detail for months. I knew her weaknesses, and I exploited every single one of them. By the time the divorce was finalized, Rachel was left with almost nothing. The house? Mine. Our savings? Mostly mine. Even her precious fitness business, which she had fought so hard to keep, was gutted. I made sure she didn't get a cent more than she deserved, and what she did get wasn't enough to maintain the life she'd grown accustomed to. I took everything from her, and damn, it felt good. But the best part? That was still yet to come. While the divorce process was wrapping up, Mike and I were hard at work behind the scenes on Alex. We gathered everything: bank records, contracts, all the shady deals he thought were buried. Alex wasn't just a sleazy guy who slept with my wife. He was a full-blown crook. And now, we had all the evidence to prove it. We took him to court, and the charges, fraud, tax evasion, money laundering, came crashing down on him. His whole business, built on lies, collapsed like a house of cards. Alex's reputation in the industry? Destroyed. His career? Over. Nobody wanted to work with a guy who couldn't keep his books straight, let alone one exposed for shady dealings and criminal activity. I watched him lose everything, just like Rachel. His clients left, his business partners bailed, and by the time we were done with him, he was nothing more than a disgraced name, blacklisted from the industry he once thought he controlled. The smug bastard believed he could get away with it all, but he didn't count on me being relentless. The fallout from their downfall was like watching a slow-motion train wreck. Rachel's friends? Gone. People she worked with in the fitness world wanted nothing to do with her once her secret life came to light. She tried to salvage what was left of her career, but it was too late. She was toxic, a joke to everyone who used to respect her. She even tried to play the victim online, posting about how empowered she felt and how she didn't deserve the backlash, but nobody bought it. Her phone stopped ringing. The clients she'd spent years building up disappeared, and even her closest friends cut her off. No one wanted to be tied to the scandal. She went from having it all to being completely alone. No job, no reputation, no support. And I didn't feel the least bit sorry for her. Watching her fade into nothingness was like watching a ghost of the woman she used to be, and it was all because of her choices. She could have had everything, our life, our future, but she threw it all away for cheap thrills and lies. And me? I walked away with my head held high. I didn't just survive what she put me through, I won. She ended up with nothing while I rebuilt my life, stronger than ever. The first few weeks after the divorce felt like I was walking through the wreckage of a life I barely recognized. Everything was broken, shattered by betrayal, and the fallout from Rachel's lies. But slowly, piece by piece, I began to rebuild. The anger and bitterness that had fueled me for so long started to fade, and something else took its place. It was like waking up from a long, brutal nightmare, blinking against the light, and realizing I'd made it through. Recovery wasn't some big, dramatic moment. It came in small, quiet steps. At first, it was just getting back into a routine, going to the gym, seeing friends, re-engaging with work. I threw myself into my job, not to escape, but to rebuild. For the first time in years, I was focused on the future, not the past, not Rachel, not what she did. Just me, moving forward. That's when Sarah came into the picture. Sarah was nothing like Rachel. She didn't have that intense, overwhelming presence that Rachel used to have. She was calm, steady, and real. We met through mutual friends, just by chance. There wasn't any instant spark or overwhelming attraction that knocked me off my feet, and honestly, that's what made it different. With Sarah, everything just felt easy. At first, we kept things simple. Coffee dates, long walks, just talking. I wasn't in a rush, and she understood that. Sarah had her own share of heartbreak, so there was no pressure, no expectation that we needed to dive into some whirlwind romance. She was patient, and that patience was exactly what I needed. As the months passed, I started noticing changes in myself. I wasn't angry all the time anymore. I wasn't consumed by thoughts of Rachel and Alex and everything they'd done to me. I found myself laughing again, feeling good about who I was becoming. My confidence slowly returned, and with it came a peace I hadn't felt in years. Sarah helped me realize that I wasn't defined by what had happened. She never pried about Rachel, never asked too many questions, but she was always there, quietly supporting me as I rebuilt my life. We spent more time together, and before I knew it, what had started as a slow, careful friendship grew into something more, something real. We never talked about the future the way Rachel and I used to. There were no grand plans or big promises. But there was something better. There was trust. There was honesty. And that was all I needed. Then, one day, out of nowhere, Rachel called me. I hadn't heard from Rachel since the divorce was finalized, so when I saw her name pop up on my phone, it sent a jolt through me, but not for the reasons it used to. There was no more rage, no more sickness in my gut. I felt nothing. I let the call go to voicemail, figuring she'd give up. But a week later she called again. This time I answered. "James," she began, her voice shaky, nervous. "I've been thinking about everything. I know I messed up. I know I hurt you. I need you to know that I'm sorry." I listened, but her words didn't hit me the way she probably hoped. There wasn't some big moment of closure. I wasn't waiting for her apology. It just felt like something that didn't matter anymore. "Rachel," I said, calm as ever, "it's over. I've moved on. There's nothing left to talk about." "I know," she said, her voice cracking, "but I just wanted to tell you. I didn't mean for any of this to happen. I didn't want to hurt you." But she had hurt me, and no apology could change that. "I appreciate the apology," I replied, mostly because it felt like the right thing to say, "but it's too late for all that. We're done." She tried again, going on about how things had spiraled out of control, how she'd lost herself somewhere along the way, but I didn't need to hear it. I had spent too long living in the shadow of her mistakes. It was time to move on, really move on. That was the last time I spoke to Rachel. And instead of feeling triumphant or vindicated after that conversation, I felt something better. I felt free of the anger, the pain, the bitterness. Free to finally live the life I wanted, without the weight of the past dragging me down. A few weeks later, I was walking with Sarah through a park. It was one of those crisp, clear mornings where the air feels fresh, like the world is full of possibilities. We didn't talk much, we didn't need to. There was this quiet understanding between us, a peace I'd never had before. As we walked, I realized something. I was happy. Truly happy. Not the kind of happiness that comes from everything being perfect, but the kind that comes from knowing that no matter what happens, I'm okay. I'd survived. I'd come out the other side, stronger for it. Sarah squeezed my hand, and I looked over at her, smiling. She smiled back, and in that moment I knew I had finally left the past behind. Rachel, Alex, all of it, it was just a memory now. A chapter that had closed. And as Sarah and I walked down that path together, I realized I wasn't walking away from anything anymore. I was walking towards something better. Something real. Something I had built for myself.